Story 1.
Whispers from the Virgin Statue. My name is Ethan Caldwell, and I've always been a skeptic when it comes to ghost stories. Growing up in the United States, where every small town seems to have its own haunted legend, I'd heard my fair share of campfire tales about restless spirits and cursed places. But to me, they were just stories, fun to tell, but nothing more than fiction spun to scare kids or thrill tourists. That was until last summer, when I found myself in the heart of rural Kentucky, a place as quintessentially American as apple pie, staring into the hollow eyes of a statue that would change my life forever. It all began when my college buddies, Jake, Mia, and Sarah, decided we needed a break from the grind of our senior year at Ohio State. We were a tight-knit group, bonded over late-night study sessions and a shared love for adventure. Jake, our self-proclaimed fearless leader, had a knack for finding obscure places to explore, and this time he'd set his sights on an abandoned church in a tiny town called Willow Creek, tucked away in the rolling hills of Kentucky. The United States is full of these forgotten places, old buildings left to rot, their stories fading with time. This church, St. Mary's, was no exception. Rumor had it that the statue of the Virgin Mary inside could whisper to those who dared to look into its eyes too long. It sounded like the perfect setup for a spooky weekend getaway, and I was all in for the laughs. We piled into Jake's beat-up Jeep and hit the road, leaving Columbus behind for the 6-hour drive south. The United States highways stretched out before us, lined with endless fields and the occasional faded billboard advertising local diners or Jesus. As we crossed into Kentucky, the landscape grew wilder, the roads narrower until we were winding through dense forests under a sky heavy with clouds. Willow Creek was barely a blip on the map, a cluster of houses, a gas station, and a diner that looked like it hadn't been updated since the 1950s. The church sat on the outskirts, perched on a low hill, its steeple piercing the gray sky like a warning. When we arrived, the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the overgrown graveyard that surrounded St. Mary's. The church itself was a crumbling relic, its stone walls stained with moss and its windows boarded up or shattered. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and decay, and a chill ran through me despite the humid summer evening. "This place is straight out of a horror movie," Mia said, her voice half joking but tinged with unease. She adjusted her camera, already snapping photos for her photography blog. Sarah, the quiet one, clutched her notebook, ready to jot down anything inspiring for her creative writing class. Jake, of course, was grinning like a kid on Christmas morning, his flashlight beam dancing across the church's facade. "Ready to meet the Virgin Mary?" he teased, pushing open the rusted iron gate. I rolled my eyes but followed, my skepticism battling a growing sense of unease. The gate creaked shut behind us, and for a moment I thought I heard a faint whisper in the wind, like a voice calling my name. I shook it off, chalking it up to the eerie atmosphere. Inside, the church was a time capsule of neglect. Dust motes floated in the beams of our flashlights, and the pews were warped, some collapsed into piles of splintered wood. The air was stale, heavy with the smell of mildew and something sharper, almost metallic. At the front of the sanctuary stood the statue of the Virgin Mary, towering over the altar. It was carved from white marble, but time had dulled its sheen, leaving it streaked with grime. Her hands were outstretched, her head tilted slightly, and her eyes, hollow, unseeing, seemed to follow us as we approached. "Creepy," Sarah whispered, her pen scratching furiously in her notebook. Mia snapped a photo, the flash illuminating the statue's face for a split second. In that moment, I could have sworn I saw something move in the shadows behind it, but when I blinked, it was gone. Jake, ever the instigator, stepped closer to the statue. "All right, let's test the legend. Stare into her eyes for 30 seconds, and she's supposed to whisper to you. Who's first?" He waggled his eyebrows, clearly enjoying himself. "Not it," Mia said, laughing nervously. Sarah shook her head, her eyes wide. I sighed, not wanting to be the buzzkill. "Fine, I'll do it. It's just a statue, guys." I stepped forward, planting myself in front of the Virgin Mary and locked eyes with her. The hollow socket seemed to bore into me, and the longer I stared, the more I felt a strange pressure building in my chest, like I was being watched. 10 seconds. 20. The air grew colder. and I heard it, a faint whisper, like static at first, then forming words in a language I didn't recognize. It sounded like Latin, soft and rhythmic, curling around me like smoke. "Ethan, you okay?" Jake's voice snapped me out of it. I blinked, realizing I'd been staring for nearly a minute. The whisper stopped, but my heart was pounding. "Yeah, I'm fine," I said, trying to sound casual. "Just got a little lost in thought. Nothing happened." But I was lying. Something had happened, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd invited something into my life. We decided to set up camp inside the church, spreading our sleeping bags on the floor near the altar. Jake had brought a portable speaker, and we played some music to lighten the mood. But the church seemed to swallow the sound, leaving an oppressive silence in its wake. Mia kept taking photos, her camera clicking obsessively, while Sarah read aloud from her notebook, spinning a ghost story about a priest who'd gone mad in this very church decades ago. I tried to laugh along, but the whispers lingered in my mind, faint but persistent, like a song stuck in my head. As night fell, the temperature dropped, and the church grew darker, the boarded windows blocking out what little moonlight there was. We huddled around a small camping lantern, telling stories and passing around a bag of chips. But the atmosphere was changing. The air felt heavier, and every creak of the old building made us jump. Mia's camera started acting up, the screen flickering with static. "This thing's brand new," she muttered, smacking it lightly. When she reviewed the photos, her face paled. "Guys, look at this." She showed us the screen. The photo of the Virgin Mary statue was distorted, the marble face blurred, but 2 red streaks ran from its eyes like tears of blood. "That's not what I saw when I took it," she said, her voice trembling. Jake laughed it off, saying it was probably a glitch, but Sarah wasn't convinced. "Maybe we should leave," she suggested, hugging her notebook to her chest. "Come on, it's just a creepy old church," I said, trying to sound braver than I felt. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. The whispers were back, louder now, and they weren't just in my head. They were coming from the statue, a low, incessant murmur that seemed to vibrate through the floor. I glanced at the Virgin Mary, and for a split second, I thought I saw her head move, tilting toward me. My stomach lurched, but I told myself it was just the shadows playing tricks. We decided to explore the church further, hoping to shake off the unease. Jake led us to a side door that opened to a narrow staircase descending into what we assumed was the basement. The air down there was colder, damp, and smelled of earth and decay. Our flashlights barely cut through the darkness, revealing stone walls etched with strange symbols, crosses, spirals, and words in Latin that none of us could read. "This is some serious Indiana Jones shit," Jake said, but his usual bravado was strained. At the bottom of the stairs, we found a small room, empty, except for a single wooden chair in the center. On the chair sat an old leather-bound book, its pages yellowed and brittle. Sarah, ever the writer, reached for it, but I grabbed her arm. "Don't," I said, my voice sharper than I intended. The whispers were louder here, echoing off the walls, and they weren't just words anymore. They were calling my name. "Ethan, stay with us." The others didn't seem to hear it, but their faces told me they felt something too. "Let's get out of here," Mia said, her voice barely above a whisper. We turned to leave, but the door at the top of the stairs slammed shut with a deafening bang. Sarah screamed, and Jake cursed, rushing up to try the handle. It wouldn't budge. The whispers grew into a chant, the words twisting into something sinister, and the air around us seemed to pulse with energy. I felt a hand brush my shoulder, cold and clammy, but when I turned, no one was there. Panic set in. Jake pounded on the door, shouting for help, while Mia clutched her camera, muttering prayers under her breath. Sarah was frozen, staring at the book on the chair, which had somehow opened on its own. The pages were flipping rapidly, as if caught in a wind we couldn't feel, revealing drawings of the Virgin Mary statue with blood streaming from its eyes. "This isn't right," Sarah whispered. "This place, it's alive." The chanting grew louder, and I realized it wasn't just my name anymore, it was all of ours. Ethan, Jake, Mia, Sarah. The voices were coming from everywhere, seeping through the walls, the floor, the ceiling. I grabbed the book, hoping to find answers, but the moment I touched it, the whispers turned into a scream, a piercing wail that made my ears ring. The room shook, dust falling from the ceiling, and in the flickering light of our lantern, I saw them. Shadows moving along the walls, human-shaped but wrong, their limbs too long, their faces featureless except for gaping mouths. "Run!" I shouted, but there was nowhere to go. The door was still locked, and the shadows were closing in. Mia's camera flashed, and for a moment, the shadows recoiled, as if burned by the light. "Keep doing that!" I yelled, and she started snapping photos frantically, each flash pushing the shadows back. But the relief was short-lived. The book in my hands grew hot, burning my skin, and I dropped it. The pages landed open on a single phrase written in red ink that looked too much like blood. "You look too long." The statue. It all came back to the statue. I remembered the legend. Stare into her eyes and she claims you. I'd done exactly that, and now we were trapped in her domain. The shadows lunged again, and this time one grabbed Sarah. She screamed, her notebook falling to the floor as she was dragged into the darkness. "Sarah!" I yelled, lunging after her, but Jake held me back. "She's gone, man. We have to get out." Mia's camera battery died, plunging us into near darkness, save for the lantern's weak glow. The shadows were everywhere now, their whispers a deafening roar. I felt something cold wrap around my ankle, pulling me down. I kicked free, grabbing Jake and Mia and dragging them toward the stairs. The door was still locked, but I didn't care. I threw my shoulder against it, again and again, until the wood splintered and gave way. We stumbled back into the sanctuary, the statue looming over us. Its head was turned now, facing us directly, and blood, real blood, was streaming from its eyes, pooling on the altar. The whispers were a chorus now, chanting in unison, "Stay, stay, stay." I wanted to run, to leave this cursed place behind, but my legs felt heavy, like I was wading through molasses. Jake and Mia were struggling too, their faces pale, their eyes wide with terror. "We have to destroy it," I said, my voice hoarse. "The statue. It's the source." Jake nodded, grabbing a broken pew and smashing it against the statue. The marble cracked, but the blood flowed faster, and the whispers turned into laughter, cold and mocking. Mia was crying, her hands shaking as she tried to reload her camera. "It's not working, Ethan. It's not stopping." I don't know what made me do it. Maybe desperation, maybe instinct, but I grabbed the lantern and threw it at the statue. The glass shattered, and the oil caught fire, flames licking up the marble. The statue screamed, not the whispers, not the chants, but a human scream, raw and agonized. The flames spread, consuming the altar, the pews, the entire sanctuary. The shadows retreated, their forms dissolving in the firelight, and the whispers faded to silence. We ran, stumbling out of the church and into the night. Behind us, St. Mary's burned, the flames lighting up the Kentucky sky. We didn't stop until we reached Jake's Jeep, collapsing in a heap, our breaths ragged. The church was gone, reduced to ash, but I knew it wasn't over. I could still feel the weight of those hollow eyes, the echo of those whispers in my mind. We drove back to Ohio in silence, none of us daring to speak about what had happened. Sarah was gone, her notebook the only thing we'd managed to save. When I opened it later, I found a single sentence written in her handwriting, though I knew she hadn't had time to write it. "Don't look back." In the weeks that followed, I tried to move on. I graduated, got a job, and pretended everything was normal. But the whispers never left me. Every night as I lay in bed in my small apartment in Columbus, I heard them, faint but persistent, calling my name. I stopped sleeping, stopped eating, haunted by the memory of that statue and the price we paid for our curiosity. The United States is a land of stories, of legends that linger in the shadows of forgotten places. But some stories are more than just tales. They're warnings. I learned that the hard way. The lesson was clear. There are things in this world we're not meant to disturb, places where the veil between our reality and something darker is thin. St. Mary's was one of those places, and I'd crossed a line I could never uncross. I don't know if the statue's curse followed me, or if it's just my guilt, my grief for Sarah, that keeps the whispers alive. But I know this. I'll never set foot in another church, never look into the eyes of another statue. And if you ever find yourself in a small town in the United States, drawn to an old abandoned church with a story too wild to believe, do yourself a favor. Walk away. Don't look too long. Because some things once seen can never be unseen.
Story 2.
The door beneath the sanctuary. My name is Daniel Hayes, and I've always believed in the power of faith to guide us through life's darkest moments. Raised in the United States, where churches dot the landscape from coast to coast, I grew up listening to sermons about redemption and the strength found in prayer. At 32, I'd spent years studying theology, hoping to bring comfort to others as a priest. But nothing in my training or my life prepared me for the nightmare I encountered in a small parish in rural Tennessee. It was there, beneath the sanctuary of St. Jude's Church, that I discovered a door that should never have been opened and a secret that would haunt me forever. It started in the summer of 2024, when I was assigned to St. Jude's, a crumbling stone church nestled in the hills outside Knoxville. The United States is full of these hidden gems, old places of worship that carry the weight of history. But this one felt different from the moment I arrived. The parish had been without a priest for over a year after Father Michael, the previous occupant, vanished without a trace. The townsfolk whispered about his disappearance, hinting at something sinister, but no one would give me details. My bishop assured me it was a chance to revitalize a struggling congregation, and I accepted with enthusiasm, eager to prove myself. The church itself was a relic, its walls weathered by time, its stained glass windows cracked, but still glowing faintly in the sunlight. The interior smelled of old wood and candle wax, and the pews creaked under the weight of decades. My first Sunday service drew a modest crowd, mostly elderly parishioners who eyed me with cautious curiosity. After the service, Mrs. Carter, the church's unofficial historian, approached me. Her hands trembled as she handed me a worn key. "This unlocks the basement," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But Father Michael warned us never to go down there, said there's a door, something unholy beneath the sanctuary. Please, Father, leave it be." I smiled, trying to ease her fears. "I'm sure it's just an old storage room, Mrs. Carter. I'll take a look and make sure everything's in order." She nodded reluctantly, but her eyes held a warning I didn't fully grasp. That night, alone in the rectory, I couldn't shake her words. Curiosity gnawed at me, and after a restless sleep, I decided to investigate the next morning. The basement was accessed through a trapdoor behind the altar, hidden beneath a faded rug. The key turned with a groan, and the door swung open, revealing a narrow staircase descending into darkness. My flashlight cast shaky beams on the stone walls, damp with condensation. The air grew colder with each step, and a faint, metallic scent, like rust or blood, filled my nostrils. At the bottom, I found a small chamber, its walls lined with shelves of dusty hymnals and broken candelabras. But in the center of the room was something unexpected: a heavy wooden door, reinforced with iron bands, its surface etched with strange symbols I couldn't decipher. The key from Mrs. Carter fit the lock, and with a hesitant turn, the door creaked open. Beyond it was a tunnel, its walls slick with moisture, leading deeper into the earth. I should have stopped there, heeded her warning, but my faith told me there was nothing to fear in the house of God. I stepped inside, my flashlight illuminating a series of carvings, crosses twisted into unnatural shapes, eyes peering from the stone, and words in a language that sent a shiver down my spine. The tunnel sloped downward, and after what felt like an eternity, I reached another chamber, larger and more ominous. In the center stood a stone altar, its surface stained with dark, unidentifiable marks. Around it, the walls were covered in faded frescoes depicting robed figures performing a ritual, their faces hidden in shadow. A low hum vibrated through the air, almost imperceptible, but it grew louder as I approached the altar. That's when I heard it, a faint tapping, like knuckles on wood, coming from beneath the floor. My heart raced, but I told myself it was just the settling of the old building. I knelt to inspect the altar, and my hand brushed against a hidden latch. The floor shifted, revealing a trapdoor I hadn't noticed. The tapping grew insistent, now accompanied by a voice, a whisper so soft I couldn't make out the words. Against my better judgment, I opened the trapdoor. A wave of cold air rushed up, carrying the stench of decay. Below was a pit, its depths swallowed by shadow, but I could see movement, something pale and elongated, like a hand reaching upward. The whisper became a plea. "Let me out, please." My flashlight flickered, and for a moment, I saw a face, gaunt, eyeless. Its mouth stretched wide in a silent scream. I slammed the trapdoor shut, my hands shaking, and stumbled back into the tunnel. That night, I couldn't sleep. The tapping echoed in my mind, and the voice haunted my dreams. I confided in Mrs. Carter the next day, hoping she'd have answers. Her face paled. "Father Michael found that door too," she said. "He said it led to something trapped by the church's founders. A spirit, a demon, no one knows. He tried to seal it, but he disappeared the night after. They found his rosary near the altar, broken. She begged me to leave it alone, but the mystery gnawed at me. I was a man of God. Surely I could face whatever lay below and banish it. Over the next week, the phenomena escalated. The tapping turned into knocks, loud enough to wake me at night. The whispers grew clearer, calling my name. "Daniel, Daniel," and I began to see shadows moving in the corners of my vision, even in the daylight. One evening, as I prepared for Mass, the altar candles extinguished themselves, and a cold breeze swept through the sanctuary, though the windows were closed. I felt a presence, heavy and malevolent, watching me. The congregation noticed too, their murmurs filling the air as they left early, uneasy. Desperate for answers, I returned to the basement, armed with holy water and a prayer book. The door was ajar, though I'd locked it. The tunnel was darker now, the hum a constant drone, and the carvings on the walls seemed to shift, the eyes following my every move. In the chamber, the altar was different, cracked, as if something had struck it from below. The trapdoor was open, and the whispers were a chorus, pleading, threatening, promising, "Free me, Daniel. I've waited so long." I sprinkled holy water into the pit, reciting an exorcism prayer. The air thickened, and a shadow rose from the depths. Not a hand, but a figure, tall and emaciated, its body a mass of writhing tendrils. Its face was a void, but its voice was clear, echoing in my skull. "You cannot bind me, priest. I was here before your church, before your United States claimed this land." The tendrils lashed out, wrapping around my legs, pulling me toward the pit. I fought, splashing holy water, but it only laughed, a sound that chilled my soul. The struggle lasted minutes that felt like hours. I managed to break free, slamming the trapdoor shut and dragging a heavy candelabra to hold it down. But the figure's voice followed me, promising retribution. Exhausted, I fled to the rectory, locking myself in. That night the knocks became bangs, shaking the walls, and the shadows took form. Dozens of eyeless figures, their mouths open in silent wails, surrounding my bed. I prayed, clutching my crucifix, but the presence grew stronger. The next morning I gathered the townsfolk, confessing what I'd found. Most were skeptical, but Mrs. Carter and a few others believed me. We returned to the church with shovels and cement, determined to seal the door permanently. As we worked, the ground trembled and the whispers turned to screams. The figure emerged again, its tendrils tearing at the air, but the combined faith of the group, our prayers, our resolve seemed to weaken it. We poured cement into the pit, sealing it shut, and the screams faded into silence. The church stabilized after that, the congregation returning slowly. But I was changed. The United States is a land of opportunity and history, yet it hides secrets beneath its soil, places where the past refuses to rest. I resigned from St. Jude's, unable to shake the memory of that pit and the thing within. The lesson was clear. Some doors are meant to stay closed, and faith alone isn't enough to face the unknown. Curiosity and pride had nearly cost me my soul, and I vowed never to meddle with such mysteries again. Now, living quietly in a small town in Ohio, I hear the occasional knock in the night, a faint echo of that Tennessee basement. I don't know if it's my imagination or a lingering curse, but I've learned to ignore it. If you ever find yourself in an old church in the United States, drawn to a door that shouldn't be there, walk away. Some secrets are better left buried, for the sake of your own sanity and soul.
Story 3.
The Unending Hymn. My name is Clara Bennett, and music has been the heartbeat of my existence since I was a child. Growing up in the United States, where every small town, from the plains of the Midwest to the coastal cities of the East Coast, seems to harbor a choir, a marching band, or a gospel group. I found my first true home in the harmonies that echoed through the modest Baptist church in my hometown of Savannah, Georgia. The pews were filled with the voices of neighbors and family, their songs a blend of hope and struggle that shaped my soul. At 28, I turned that passion into a career, performing as a soprano in operas across New York and choral ensembles in Los Angeles, my voice carrying the weight of centuries-old compositions. But no amount of training or stage experience could have prepared me for the chilling melody that would ensnare me in a remote parish in North Carolina, a hymn that refused to end, dragging me into a nightmare I still can't fully escape. It was late spring 2025 when the invitation arrived, landing in my inbox like a siren's call. A college friend, Pastor Tom Grayson, had recently taken over as the new minister at Grace Episcopal Church in Asheville, a picturesque town nestled in the Blue Ridge Mountains. The church was preparing to celebrate its centennial with a grand concert, and Tom needed a lead singer to anchor the choir. "Clara, your voice could breathe new life into this place," his email read. "The United States is dotted with forgotten corners like Grace Episcopal, and I believe you're the one to revive its spirit." The offer was modest, travel expenses and a small stipend, but the allure of performing in a historic church, surrounded by the misty peaks I'd only seen in postcards, was irresistible. I cleared my schedule, packed my vocal warm-up exercises, a few favorite scores, and my worn leather journal, and set off from Atlanta in my beat-up Honda Civic, the open roads stretching before me like a promise of adventure. The drive took 6 hours, winding through rolling hills and dense forests, the kind of scenery that makes you feel small yet connected to something vast. As I crossed the state line into North Carolina, the air grew cooler, the scent of pine mingling with the damp earth. Asheville welcomed me with its artsy vibe, street musicians strumming guitars, local breweries buzzing with tourists, but Grace Episcopal stood apart, a solitary sentinel on the edge of town. Its Gothic architecture loomed against the twilight sky, the pointed arches and stained glass windows casting long shadows across the overgrown lawn. The building's exterior was weathered, ivy creeping up the stone walls, and the air around it carried a stillness that prickled my skin. I met Tom at the rectory, a wiry man with kind eyes and a nervous smile. "It's been a challenge getting this place back on its feet," he admitted, handing me a cup of coffee. "The congregation's small and there's, well, some odd history, but we'll talk about that later." The first day of rehearsal was a whirlwind. The choir consisted of about 20 members, locals with weathered faces, a few college students from a nearby music program, and me, the outsider with big city credentials. We gathered in the sanctuary, our voices rising in familiar hymns like Amazing Grace and How Great Thou Art. The acoustics were stunning, the high vaulted ceiling amplifying every note. But there was an undercurrent to the sound, a resonance that felt alive. I chalked it up to the building's age. Built in 1925, it had seen a century of worship, weddings, and funerals. That evening, though, something shifted. We were running through a gentle rendition of Ave Maria when a new melody crept into the mix, a strange, haunting tune that didn't align with our sheet music. It was sung in a high, ethereal voice, distinct and otherworldly, cutting through our harmony like a knife. I stopped mid-phrase, my breath catching. "Did anyone else hear that?" I asked, scanning the choir. Blank stares met me, and Tom, standing at the podium, frowned. "Keep going, Clara. It's probably just the echo." But the melody lingered, looping in my mind like a record stuck on repeat. That night, I dreamed of a woman in a flowing white robe, her face hidden beneath a veil, singing that same tune as she glided through a darkened version of the church, her voice pulling me toward her. The next morning, unsettled, I decided to dig into the church's past. Tom directed me to the parish office, a cluttered room filled with yellowed records and dusty hymnals. There I found an old journal, its leather cover cracked and pages brittle, belonging to Eleanor Vance, the choir director from the church's early days. Her entries detailed the church's founding in 1925, a time when the area was a rugged frontier, She wrote of a secret ritual, a ceremony to honor a guardian spirit said to protect the land before settlers arrived. The ritual involved a hymn she'd composed, its lyrics a blend of Latin and an unknown tongue, intended to bind the spirit to the church. But the final performance went awry. Several choir members vanished mid-song, their voices fading into the night. Eleanor's later entries grew frantic, describing how she heard the hymn sung by the lost long after, a sound that never ceased. The last page was smeared with ink, a shaky scrawl reading, "It never stops." A cold sweat broke out on my neck. The United States is steeped in such folklore, tales of lost souls and haunted places, but this felt personal, as if the journal was speaking directly to me. Over the next few days, the melody infiltrated our rehearsals. It started subtly, a hum from the back row, then spread like a contagion. Choir members began singing it unconsciously, their eyes glazing over as they swayed to the rhythm. I confided in Tom, showing him the journal. His face tightened. "I've heard whispers about those disappearances," he said. "Old-timers say the church is cursed, that the hymn calls back the missing. Maybe we should cancel the concert." I resisted. Canceling felt like surrendering to a ghost story I wasn't sure I believed. Instead, I proposed we research the hymn further, hoping to unravel its mystery. We unearthed an old phonograph in the basement, along with a scratchy vinyl recording labeled Eleanor's Hymn. When we played it, the sanctuary filled with the same eerie tune, and I saw the veiled woman again, standing near the altar, her song syncing with the record's crackle. Tom paled, muttering a prayer, but I was transfixed, my fingers tracing the journal's pages as if they held the key. The dreams grew more vivid each night. The veiled woman beckoned me, her voice a siren's call, leading me through a church where the pews were empty and the stained glass bled red. I woke each time with the melody ringing in my ears, my sheets damp with sweat. During the day, the choir's performance deteriorated. Mid-rehearsal, they abandoned our planned pieces, their voices merging into the strange hymn. The college students giggled nervously, but the locals seemed entranced, their expressions vacant. I tried to steer us back, my soprano cutting through the chaos, but my own voice faltered, joining the melody against my will. Tom dropped his baton, his hands trembling as he pointed to the choir loft, where shadows danced like living things. After practice, I reviewed a recording on my phone. The audio captured more than our voices. It held whispers, the rustle of unseen footsteps, and faint cries echoing in the distance. That night, as I sat in my hotel room overlooking Asheville's twinkling lights, I heard the hymn outside my window, sung by no one I could see. The sound was clear, carried on the wind, and I pressed my hands to my ears, willing it to stop. Panic set in. I drove back to the church at midnight, determined to confront the source. The sanctuary was dark, the air thick with an unnatural chill. The stained glass cast fractured patterns on the floor, and as I stepped forward, the veiled woman materialized, her song filling the space. "Join us, Clara," she whispered, her voice inside my skull. I turned to flee, but the heavy oak doors slammed shut, locking me in. The concert night arrived 2 days later, the church packed with townsfolk, tourists, and a smattering of journalists covering the centennial. I led with a prayer, my voice steady despite the knot in my stomach, hoping to cleanse the space with faith. The choir took their places, and we began with Ave Maria, the notes rising beautifully. But halfway through, the hymn took over. The choir's voices shifted, blending into that haunting melody, their eyes vacant as if possessed. The audience gasped as shadows emerged from the walls, faceless figures in robes, swaying in time with the music. I saw the veiled woman step from the shadows near the organ, her hands outstretched. "You've awakened us," she said, her voice a chorus of the lost. "Now you belong." Tendrils of darkness snaked from her, wrapping around my ankles, pulling me toward her. I screamed for Tom, but he stood frozen, his face a mask of horror, unable to move. The audience panicked, chairs toppling as they fled toward the exits. The shadows multiplied, their silent wails filling the air. I fought the tendrils, my hands clawing at the floor, and grabbed a hymnal from a pew. Tearing out pages, I threw them into the air, hoping to disrupt the ritual. The figures recoiled, their forms flickering, but the woman laughed, her veil lifting to reveal a hollow face, her eyes twin voids. I stumbled to the organ, my fingers slamming down on the keys, playing a discordant crash that shattered the hymn's rhythm. The shadows screamed, dissolving into mist, and the church fell into a stunned silence. Tom snapped out of his trance, rushing to help me escape. We locked the doors behind us, the concert abandoned, the night air heavy with the aftermath. In the weeks that followed, Grace Episcopal was closed indefinitely, its reputation shattered. The town buzzed with rumors. Some called it a mass hallucination, others a curse fulfilled. I returned to Savannah, my voice shaken, my confidence fractured. But the melody lingered, a faint echo in my dreams, waking me with its relentless pull. The United States is a tapestry of history and mystery, and I brushed against a thread that refused to break. The lesson was clear. Some songs carry the weight of lost souls, and meddling with them invites a darkness that lingers. I've retired from performing in old churches, a constant reminder that curiosity can open doors to the unknown, and some hymns are better left silent.
Story 4.
The Oil Lamp in the Bell Tower. My name is Lucas Luke Harper, and I've always been the kind of guy who thrives on the quiet moments, those late-night shifts where the world slows down and it's just me and my thoughts. Growing up in the United States, where every state boasts its share of small towns with their own unique rhythms, I found a strange comfort in the solitude of night watchman jobs. At 35, with a string of security gigs under my belt, from warehouses in Texas to office buildings in Oregon, I thought I'd seen it all. But nothing prepared me for the eerie stillness of St. Bartholomew's Church in rural Alabama, where a flickering oil lamp in the bell tower would pull me into a terror I still can't fully shake. It was early June 2025 when I landed the job. The position came through a friend of a friend, a last-minute replacement for a night watchman who'd quit abruptly. St. Bartholomew's, a weathered brick church on the outskirts of Montgomery, needed someone to guard it from vandals and curious teens, especially with its 150th anniversary approaching. The United States is full of these historic landmarks, each with its own stories etched into the stone, and this church promised a paycheck and a chance to enjoy the summer nights. The pay was decent, $15 an hour for 8-hour shifts, and the rectory provided a small cot, so I packed my duffel bag, grabbed my flashlight, and drove down from Birmingham, arriving just as the sun dipped below the horizon on June 10th. The church loomed against the twilight, its steeple piercing the sky, the windows dark and uninviting. The pastor, a wiry man named Reverend Ellis, greeted me with a firm handshake and a nervous glance. "We've had some trouble lately," he said. His voice low. "Kids breaking in, odd noises from the bell tower. Just keep an eye out and don't go up there after midnight. That's when things get strange." I nodded, assuming he meant creaky old wood or Wildlife. He handed me a set of keys, a walkie-talkie, and a list of emergency contacts, then left me to my first shift. The interior was musty, the pews scarred with age, and the air carried a faint scent of wax and damp stone. I settled into a chair near the entrance, my flashlight on the table, ready for a quiet night. The first few nights were uneventful. I patrolled the grounds, checked the doors, and listened to the crickets outside. But on the third night, June 13th, something changed. Around 11:30 p.m., as I made my rounds, I noticed a faint glow from the bell tower window, a soft, golden light that pulsed like a heartbeat. I grabbed my flashlight and climbed the narrow staircase, my boots echoing on the worn steps. The air grew colder as I ascended, and a strange hum vibrated through the walls. At the top, I found the source, an old oil lamp, its flame steady despite no visible fuel, casting shadows that danced across the bell's rusted surface. The bell itself was silent, its rope frayed and dangling, yet the hum persisted. I reached to touch the lamp, but a sudden gust extinguished it, plunging the tower into darkness. That's when I heard it. Footsteps, slow and deliberate, circling above me on the roof. I radioed Reverend Ellis, my voice shaky. "There's a light up here, and I heard someone on the roof." His response was curt. "Get down. Don't go back up after midnight. That's an order." Confused but compliant, I descended, locking the tower door behind me. That night, I couldn't sleep, the hum replaying in my mind. The next evening, the light was back, brighter now, and the footsteps returned, accompanied by a faint whisper. My name, Luke, carried on the wind. I reported it again. But Ellis insisted I stay out of the tower. It's been like this since the fire, he said cryptically. Just watch the perimeter. Curiosity gnawed at me. The following night, June 15th, I waited until 12:05 a.m., after Ellis's deadline, and climbed the stairs again. The lamp was burning, its flame casting an eerie glow on the walls, where I noticed carvings, crosses warped into spirals, eyes peering from the stone. The whisper grew louder, a chorus of voices, and a shadow moved near the bell, a figure in tattered clothes, its face pale and hollow, its hand resting on the rope. I froze, my flashlight beam trembling. The figure turned, its eyes empty sockets, and the bell rang, a single, mournful toll that shook the tower. I ran, the door slamming behind me, my heart pounding as I locked it and vowed never to return. But the phenomenon escalated. Each night, the light burned brighter, the footsteps more insistent, and the whispers more desperate. On June 18th, I saw the figure again during my patrol, standing outside the tower window, its hollow gaze fixed on me. I called Ellis, demanding answers. He relented, meeting me at dawn. There was a fire here in 1875, he said, his voice heavy. The bell ringer, Jacob Hale, died trying to save the church. They say his spirit lingers, tied to that lamp. The old folks warn against disturbing it after midnight. It draws him back. He handed me a faded photo of Jacob, a gaunt man with haunted eyes, and begged me to avoid the tower. But the mystery pulled me in. On June 20th, unable to resist, I returned at 1 a.m. The lamp's flame was ablaze, illuminating a dozen figures, pale, eyeless, dressed in old-fashioned clothes, circling the bell. The whispers became a chant. Luke, join us. The lead figure, unmistakably Jacob, stepped forward, his hand outstretched. I backed away, but the door locked behind me. The figures closed in, their cold hands brushing my skin, and the bell tolled again, a sound that vibrated through my bones. I swung my flashlight, the beam scattering them momentarily, and spotted a rusty lever near the wall. Desperate, I pulled it, and the floor shifted, revealing a hidden hatch. I dove through, landing in a dusty crawlspace, the chants fading as I crawled to safety. The next night, June 21st, at 1:33 p.m. +07, though it was midnight local time, I confronted Ellis with my plan to end this. He brought a group of elders, and we returned with salt, holy water, and a prayer book. The tower was alive with light and shadows, Jacob's figure dominant. We sprinkled salt, recited prayers, and doused the lamp with holy water. The figures screamed, their forms dissolving, but Jacob lunged, his tendrils wrapping around my arm. I smashed the lamp with a candelabra, and the flame died, the tower plunging into silence. The elders sealed the hatch with cement, and we left, the church eerily still. I quit the job, moving to a quiet town in Missouri, but the memory lingers. The United States is a land of history and hauntings, and I'd stumbled into one that nearly claimed me. The lesson was stark. Some lights are better left unlit, and meddling with the past can awaken forces beyond our control. I've sworn off night watchman roles in old buildings, a reminder that curiosity can lead to a darkness that never fades. Expanded section, Luke's past. I was the kid who stayed up late, guarding the family ranch from coyotes. My father, a stern ex-Marine, taught me vigilance, and my mother's stories of ghostly cowboys fueled my imagination. After high school, I drifted, construction jobs, then security, each night shift a test of my nerve. St. Bartholomew's was just another gig, or so I thought, until that lamp changed everything. Expanded section, the tower's history. The fire of 1875 was no accident. According to local lore, Jacob Hale, a recluse, was obsessed with the bell, believing it held a spirit. His journal, found in the church attic, detailed rituals to summon it, using the lamp as a beacon. The night he died, witnesses heard tolls long after the flames died, a sound that echoes in the tower's legend. Expanded section, the aftermath. Back in Missouri, I hear tolls in my sleep, a phantom ring that wakes me. I sought a priest, but he found no trace of possession, just trauma. The church remains closed, its tower a silent sentinel. I've taken up day jobs, avoiding the night, but the hollow eyes of Jacob haunt my reflection.